Hi, everyone. Welcome to the August 29th circle gathering meeting of the Heartwork and Philosophy Guild. Um, and as is our habit and our process, we will begin with a land acknowledgement and a check-in. And do I have a volunteer? Going once. Sold.
I will do the land acknowledgement and grounding because I think I need a little bit of grounding myself. So, um, and as is our custom, we start by acknowledging the land in the tradition of many First Nations um, cultures. And we borrow from this tradition as a reminder before we come together, before we work together, of contextualizing ourselves, of putting ourselves in the bigger picture. And ultimately, the land was here before we were. The land will continue on long after we are gone. And we only exist because of the land. We were only created as creatures because of the land. And so by acknowledging the land, we acknowledge our interconnection and our interdependence to the web of all being, to all of our relations, human and more than human. We realize and recognize and honor that everything that sustains us, from the oxygen in the air to the food that we eat to the water that we drink, comes from the land and returns to the land. And so let this serve as a reminder that our goal is only and always to be in right relations with all of our relations. And with this comes an obligation of care and an obligation to heal any harms that may have happened, both between ourselves and the land, and the way we treat the land, and ourselves and other human relatives. In particular, as we are drawing on Indigenous wisdom, a reminder and acknowledgement that Indigenous cultures around the world are still struggling, are still under assault, and and have been harmed through a process of colonization and imperialism. And so we all have a responsibility to heal those wounds in the best way that we can. And of course, yeah, and all our relations, human and more than human. So with that, I invite us to actually ground ourselves and just take a moment where you are as it feels comfortable, just to take a deep breath in. As you breathe in, feeling the energizing oxygen entering your body expanding. And as you exhale, allowing the weight of your body just to press into the seat that supports you. Knowing as you engage in this cycle of breathing in and breathing out that you are engaging in a reciprocal arrangement with all of creation. And that you are engaging in a process that continues from the first breath you take to the last breath you take. And in doing so, you bring all your connections into your body that sustain you. And as you exhale, an invitation to relax, to let go of what no longer serves you, to let any tension, darkness, heaviness, fatigue, let it just drip off of your body, returning to the earth, knowing that the earth will take it, renew it, and return it to you as fresh energy. So take one last deep breath in, breathing in fresh energy. And the exhale, let go of anything that keeps you from being present and sharing with us today. And when you're ready, open your eyes and join us back in circle.
Awesome. Thank you. Um, uh, Would anyone have a check-in question or a means of checking in before we launch into the agreements? April, please go ahead.
I think my check-in question would be something around, with the turning of the seasons, what's turning for you?
Okie dokie. The order as I see it on my screen is Ben, me, and April. So would you start us off, Ben?
Mm-hmm. Good question. Um, what's turning for me are I kind of feel like the ball hopper for the bingo. So what's turning for me is all of these thoughts and all of these ideas that are sort of tumbling around over each other. And so I'm curious about what happens when I reach in, which idea I will be pulling out. So then over to Roland.
What's turning for me is that my bread has finished rising and I need to go put it in the oven. So mine is very immediate, which is actually my mantra for the day. So over to April, and you guys take over until I get back, and then I'll take over.
Thank you. I think it's my turn. And obviously for Roland, what was turning was bread, and he may literally be turning it. What's turning for me is re-relating to the animals and what they're doing at this time of year, the birds, the even the neighborhood dogs, and what I hear at night from nocturnal animals. There's something different about this week, this time of year, and for me, it implies questioning and questioning and flowing, I guess. And that's it. Would
I'm
you
just gonna I'm just gonna pause until Roland gets back.
Okay. And
We
I'm
can
happy to go over agreements at that point.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, and also I was muting because for some reason my printer keeps waking up and whizzing and whirring and doing its thing. So I don't know what's going on with it. It seems to have taken on a life of its own. Oh, so I just noticed there's a remote control button on the Asana menu, and I can give mouse keyboard control to you or one.
Oh,
I don't know what that is. Weird. Actually, I wonder if maybe we should just dive into agreements. All right, I will hit record and hit it then.
all right. Well, this brings us to the place in the agenda where we consider our agreements, ones that we've agreed to in the past and try to live up to. And really, they record what it is that you need to be here and that I need to be here and to show up and to be present in the midst of everything else for the time that we're together. And that brings us to the first agreement, is that we should understand that we are all in this together. There's no us and them, it's we. And in that regard, ideas and suggestions are addressed to we and not you. A key agreement is that you have choice. You have choice to be here. You have choice to participate or not, to contribute or not. In fact, you can pass as we do our circles, but also to understand that choices have consequences, as Ben often says. So you need to accept responsibility for the consequences of the choices that you've made. In all of this, we try to lead with curiosity and kindness and patience and compassion and gentleness. And for myself, sometimes there's more of that, and some days there's less of that. But just having that as a waypoint, I find for myself is really important. We listen first for understanding before we evince our own experiences or our own opinions. And when we do speak, we speak from the heart. So what's true for me, not implying it's true for anyone else or everyone else. Including the both and the and, not either or, and keeping in mind that many things exist at the same time, and we need to recognize that. Have fun sounds like a commandment, but that really is meant to kind of shake us out of our minds and our mood sets, find the humor and the irony in situations, and keep it all simple. And just to finish up, that the session is recorded and will be posted to YouTube. That's part of our agreements and understanding. And our question to people here today and to everyone is there anything to add to this, or any questions and concerns? This is a living document, really. So I'm going to pass on to Ben to see if there's anything to add.
Today I am called to add, we are embedded in a larger intelligence, which is one of the reasons why Circle works so well. And I need it as a reminder to myself that we all have a piece of the puzzle, and I find that very relaxing. Over to you, Roland.
Actually, I have something that I'd like to add also, and it is in acknowledgement of one of the basic principles of the Lifeboat Academy, that treat it like an experiment, and experimentation is experimentation is curious and playful, and non-judgmental or neutral. So back to thank you for that opportunity, and thanks for being able to reflect what I realize is such a basic element in the Lifeboat Academy. So over to April.
Thank you for the reminder about the reminder. And I think that's something we've talked about as well. I find it very useful to be reminded of stuff, and reminded over time, reminded of tasks, reminded of relationships. And in some ways, I guess that I have that on my internal agreement list as well. I think it's time to turn to a brief look at what this guild, and this is a guild meeting, what the functions are there. Do you want me to go through these, Roland, who is the my co-caretaker in this guild?
Yeah, please do.
So we see this guild as functioning as the emotional heart of the Lifeboat Academy, creating opportunities to develop deeper relationships for everybody involved, for each other, and for all our relations on the planet here and beyond. And with that comes particular responsibilities, which include building and deepening internal relationships, but also conviviality and celebrations, and remembering and reminding that joy is part of our responsibilities, really, that we encompass experimental spirituality, and that we look for reconnection with land and all of our relationships, and re-indigenation as is appropriate. All of this can include personal healing and grief work, And we function as a vibes watcher. We're almost like some sort of sensing instrument that feels out what is going on, maybe even below our conscious knowing. Um, but keeping track of that as much as possible and being a witness to other activities of the Lifeboat Academy using the Heartwork and the vibe watching as a lens, and also to remember the circle process, the agreements, and applying that to all of our sessions, really. And recognizing how you do anything is how you do everything. So stick to the agreements and to our core values. And if we do that, we build better habits over time. And back to Roland.
Reflections on guild responsibilities. I would like to move on to action items, and so going over the action items from the last meeting, do a little update, um, and then so I'm proposing that we review the action items that we had set from the last meeting, and then set our agenda for what we want to talk about at this meeting. Does that sound good? Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Uh, okay. Um, so the first action item from the last meeting is to form the yes band.
Actually, I think I would like to alter that and say let's talk through our agenda, because I think the review of the action items will link to agenda items.
Okay.
So I think it might just be uh yeah.
Okay. Do you want to start us off?
Yeah, and that's actually what I was realizing. One of the agenda items that we have from the coordination circle is its seasonal review time. And so I'm gonna add so that is there are some cleanup things to do, and this actually reminds me of going over our purpose and reflection there. So I'm not proposing that we go right into it, but I just wanted to basically provide the context. So from our coordination circle, um, a lot of what we've done already in preparing the fall semester is really our forward-looking fall planning.
Right.
But then just to make sure that we kind of crossed our T's and dotted our I's, the seasonal review basically answers the questions, given what we've done, where are we now? And given where we are now, where do we want to go? And given where we want to go, what are the next steps? And it is an opportunity for us to do at a slightly higher level aim, act, reflect, and to do the reflection part of, we've been working together for another season over the summer. What did we accomplish? What are some of the lessons we learned? And in terms of our aim, we've already taken that first step of reminding ourselves of what the Heartwork Guild is in relationship to the Academy. And part of our guild work is it's an ongoing, evolving understanding of that purpose. So coming back and refining what the aim is. So and then there was that specific question for the orientation for the fall semester is what's our pitch to people who going forward might want to get involved in Heartwork. So anyhow, I would like to add that to our agenda. And then we also still have the Connect the Dots Club coming up. So whatever next steps we need to do there. And this is the establishing the Heartwork and Philosophy badges is kind of also part of our seasonal review. What are the skills necessary to, keep this guild going? So that's I think where we're starting with the agenda, and then anything to add to that. Over to you, Roland.
I've nothing to add. Uh, I'm wondering about the order in which to do things.
Mhm,
Um, I would like to start with the last things that we need to do for the Connect the Dots Club, given that
mhm,
it's coming up. And I'm also wondering, we still have to figure out a way to we've talked about homework, and um, I'm I talk about it a lot and I am terrible at it. Um, and I so with that caveat, I'm wondering if there's any of this stuff that can actually also be homework. Like I'm actually thinking about can we individually start coming up with ideas on what badges could be, or have our own individually do our own sort of pitch, elevator pitch for the Heartwork Guild, and then come together and compare them as things like that.
mhm.
What works, what do we need to do absolutely together, and what can we do apart, in to prepare for, or to just do. So and so
It's
this could
part
act.
of the seasonal review. Psst.
Okay. And and to use an expletive, I am shit at remembering these processes. So um all of our we all have strengths and weaknesses, and our strengths are supposed to balance each other's weaknesses. My weakness is following these processes. So I'm hoping that one or both of you are stronger at remembering them, and will take that on over whatever, over to April.
Uh, Thank you. But thank you for your thinking too on this, and for coming to grips with things that I've been avoiding coming to grips with for some time, I have to say, like the Heartwork and Philosophy badge systems. I really like the suggestion about what can be done as homework. And as a matter of fact, I'm under time pressure for this particular session, so I need to be out of here at 3. And so I'm thinking about what would I see as a pressing priority, and really it's the Connect the Dots Club, although I'm really interested in the seasonal review, and I believe that we implicitly have got all that stuff. We just need to make it a little more explicit. But I might not be around to do that for this
Mhm.
this session. Over to Ben.
Well, and I would like to slightly reframe, Roland, how you're feeling about this, because the fact that you're coming up with that question, I think is just confirming that the process actually works. And you just can relax a little bit because you don't have to reinvent it. It's kind of already there. And I think it's the same, like April's saying, a lot of what we do regularly is part of has been building into the seasonal review. And I think it's actually, April and I were talking just yesterday about lens pooling. It's really just a reminder every once in a while to change the focal length, and to so the seasonal review is just a way of kind of stepping back for a second. And I think that we can do it quite lightly, um, and let our attention get drawn into the areas that need the attention. So I think the fact that it's coming up, this idea of how do we, do homework, how are we more efficient in our time together, that for me is just sort of an extra tick mark by that question. And maybe we can go through some of the other things more quickly and spend a little more time there. So yeah, those are my thoughts on it. Back to you, Roland.
Okay, shall we do one last round to see if there's anything to add to the agenda? If you have something to add, raise your hand. If you don't, give me a thumbs up. All right. So, and likewise, are we happy with the order of things to discuss? If yes, thumbs up. If not, too bad. All right. Okay. Now you're paying attention. That was it. So, all right, let's get into the Connect the Dots Club. What are last bits to discuss around that?
I think everything is kind of moving forward. There really are only, I think, two. I don't even, let me see if we have. Yeah, really, there's the outreach that we want to do where we're coordinating with connection with the outreach guild. And the first step is actually sending out an invitation for people to visit the board and add stickies. So that's just a question of an email to the list that we've identified who gets it. And likewise, I think we've identified what we want done with the outreach for, let me just check here because I think we've got notes in there. Yeah, we've got notes in there about how we want it done. And I know that outreach is working on both the social media and the newsletter. So it's really just a question. Oh, and then the other thing too is I sent out a call for people who might be interested in facilitating. I got vague interest from two people. The one person I didn't hear back from after kind of they had some questions. I answered the questions. I pointed them to where the materials were and haven't heard anything since then. And the other person is I'm not sure if they are definitely interested in attending Connect the Dots. I haven't been able to really ascertain if they want to help facilitate. But yeah, I think in terms of next steps, it's really it's kind of moving forward. And I haven't heard, I was assuming April and Ronnie would be interested in facilitating. So I think it's really just scheduling a time when we get together and we can extend that invitation for that. What I'm going to propose is the three of us who are committing to facilitating it set a time, and then once we set that time, we can invite other people if they want to attend. So other than that, and making sure that well, and actually I have a question about the sort of advanced notice of going to the board. It's almost Labor Day. Do we want to wait until after Labor Day? Or I could send it out today, really, just to let people know. Thoughts on that? Anyhow, those I think are those are the last two things. So over to you. Well, and I might be missing something, but over to you, Roland.
I do have thoughts on that. I would suggest two sendings, one of them now or as soon as you want, because there are some people who will be spending some time just sort of like catching up on stuff over the Labor Day weekend. And for some people, this is a sort of a side thing. So more of a I don't want to say hobby, but more of like along interests. So after Labor Day would be for those people for whom they fit it into their work schedule. So I think two sendings makes a lot of sense now and then after.
Cool.
And that's the reasoning that I'm using for why sending out in those two separate times. So over to April.
I had the exact same thought that we should at least put out a bit of a tickler invitation this week and then a more full invitation next week for all the reasons that Roland had already thought through. So that would be, I would concur. Over to Ben.
Cool. And I can take care of that.
Great.
All right. And then, and what I'll do is in that email, I'll also just append and if you're interested in helping to facilitate, let us know. So that we'll cover that. And then I'll send a separate email to Ronnie and April for looking for a time to meet. All right, cool. Um, anything else on Connect the Dots Club?
I just had a question about have we figured out yet what the format is for the facilitation, or is that what we're going to do when we meet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's what we have. We basically have an outline. So for phase 2, cluster the sticky notes, add handles, orient the clusters with each other. So it could be a Venn diagram, it could be arrows. And then dot voting within each cluster, which probably we want to have some conversation around how do we prioritize
Yep.
before we give people the dots. But within each cluster, how do we identify sort of the top 2, 3, 4 resources? And then kind of similar to the orienting the clusters, how does it help us map? I think that's the final conversation is how do we use this map? And that is the other thing too, from the coordination circle, we're now, just to confirm, my understanding now is that what happens on Tuesday evenings is all the Connect the Dots Club. That includes 6 conversations about lifeboats, 4 questions, 4 deep adaptation questions, and this, which we are now calling Mapping the Territory. So, and I think that's kind of a nice handle for the whole thing. And so anyhow, we have 4 sessions. We have sort of 4 broad things, 4 broad activities that we've identified. And then the subsequent meeting is, yeah, we talk about that in more detail.
Okay.
So over to you, Roland.
Well, and speaking of the facilitation team, uh, how are you? How are you going? How are we setting up that? How are we setting up the meeting time for the facilitation team to meet?
I was going to send an email to Ronnie and April and say, hey, when can we meet?
Okay. Cool. I just thought of something else to add for the Connect the Dots Club, and this is just to bring to the Heartwork Guild what we all discussed at the coordination meeting. I'd brought up the idea that the Connect the Dots Club would be sort of the umbrella term used for different things that would happen on the Tuesday night. So
Oh,
the deep adaptation conversations would be under the umbrella of the Connect the Dots Club, and I guess the 6 conversations would be also in.
Didn't I say that?
Oh, did you just say that? Okay, sorry.
I just said that.
Okay, maybe that's why I thought of it. You said it, and
Yeah.
I thought it was the thoughts
So-
coming out of my head.
I know the voices
I'm
in your
glad
head
we
sound like
agree.
the voices in your head sound like me. I think that's a
I think it's because I started laughing because you said what happens on Tuesday night, and in my mind I started thinking stays in Tuesday night,
That's
and
right.
I couldn't get that out of my head, so I think I got a little distracted by my own internal joke. Over to April.
uh, pass.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm ready to move on to the next item.
Okay. So everything, we feel like we've discussed everything we need to discuss for the Connect the Dots Club. Um,
Yeah.
so given the amount of, and we do try to keep these to an hour, and we have 20 minutes left. Is it possible to start the seasonal review and do 20 minutes of it and then come back to it at the next meeting? Or the other possibility is that we can use that as homework as well.
I don't think it should take longer than 20 minutes. I think we can actually just
Great.
try to hold ourselves to 20 minutes. It doesn't have to be laborious.
Awesome. Let's dive into it.
Yeah, because I think that we don't need to, again, April was pointing out, we've been doing a pretty good job of reflecting and learning and building on what we're learning as we go. So I think this is really kind of, think of it a little bit more like housekeeping, but it's mostly about stepping back a little bit and trying to take a broader perspective. And from my perspective, the real core here is lessons learned, making sure that we're gathering up and and focusing in on any improvements that we can make based on experience. Or, also, I guess, identifying challenges, persistent challenges to see if that's something that we want to focus on. But and the process guild meeting efficiency, that's, I think, where that homework, what just happened? That's where that homework question comes in.
Hmm.
How do we um, do better? And so I think we've already reminded ourselves about the context. What's our role? Um, I think we could probably combine going around, maybe doing it almost gathering consideration style and gathering accomplishments and or lessons learned and just sort of sharing them one at a time and building a list that way. That's what I'd like to propose. And so would anyone like to start? Milan.
So in terms of accomplishments, we successfully launched the 6 conversations, the outreach in association with hard work, then accomplished. We had a successful run of the 6 conversations. So that my one over to April.
Yeah, I think that allowed us to illustrate how guilds can work together as well. That's an accomplishment in itself, I believe. And I have to say, I thought it worked quite well together. I thought that there was a minimum of challenge and friction, and that the actual expected outputs happened. I also have to admit I had very little to do with that, but I'm proud of everybody else for what's been accomplished. So a case study, really, that is. The other thing that brings to mind, oh, maybe I should wait till the next round. Over to Ben.
Well, and I was going to say the same thing, and actually now I'm going to build on that because April, you're saying that you didn't have much to do with it, but you had a tremendous amount to do with it, but it just sort of happened in the flow of things.
Yeah.
It happened as part of the guild meetings and the coordination sessions, and we had the facilitation meetings. So, I feel like that's also, I think, a sign of how it doesn't have to feel necessarily like extra work. It can flow in the process itself. Over to you, Roland.
Well, uh, the current iteration of the Connect the Dots Club, I think is an accomplishment, and it's also a practice in uh, allowing things to a practice in iteration, allowing for things to develop and grow, already since we decided that this is what the Connect the Dots Club was, it's already done a little extension of what that is into something a little bit different. So, and that I think is reflective of a lot of the agreements that we have around, the oral tradition, things, allowing things to change, holding things with an open palm, et cetera, et cetera. Speaking of change, I have got to go get my bread out of the oven. So over to April.
Yeah, what Roland said is really true, I believe. Yeah, there was some adaptability, I guess, that clearly showed up in how we moved from one thing to another. Um, and I've forgotten what my other point was, so back to you, Ben.
Uh-oh. Hopefully it'll come up again. Um, it might help to go back and think about that it was an illustration of how guilds can work together with a minimum of friction. Um, I also feel like our meetings have evolved as well, like the format for the meetings. And like Roland was saying, it's kind of an example of the oral tradition. It's not the same every time. We've got it all written out. Sometimes we jump through, sometimes we jump past the agreements. Sometimes we take a little extra time to go through them. Sometimes we do them in a different form. And I think that actually not making it always the same keeps it all fresher and more alive. So there's that nice balance between structure, predictability, and freshness. And I think that and kind of I feel like we're feeling our way into that. So I think that's also an accomplishment. Perfect timing. Over to you. And I was just talking about our meetings being a balance between structure and freshness. That they're not always the same, but there's still a pattern there.
For this round, I am going to pass over to April.
I'm now trying to think in terms of a season. How is this whole season different from other seasons? I have more of a sense in this season of experimentation. So I guess for me, that's kind of a lesson learned. Over to Ben.
Yeah, and I was starting to draw on lessons learned. I feel like, well, and I think we've mentioned them. I think there's sort of the power of iteration
Yeah.
and the oral tradition. Yeah, yeah, because I think that experimentation, iteration, the oral tradition all allow for a light touch. I think that I can't think the last time we kind of got stuck feeling like, oh, this is, we've got to get it right. There's a sort of the Roland's thing about playfulness, that it lets everything feel more fluid and more playful. So I think that's my lesson learned is experimentation, iteration allows for lightness and playfulness. Over to you, Roland.
Well, I feel like we've also grown in our understanding of what the Heartwork Guild
Mm,
is about. Think that that's become a lot. I know that it has been within this past season that we've had a lot of discussion around, well, is that outreach? Is that hard work? Is this the governance?
yeah.
And I feel like we've hit we are much clearer on the province of hard work within the organism of the Lifewood Academy. Over to April.
Yeah, yeah, I think I would build on what you said, Roland, and in that there's something about we've been learning how to frame our needs to express them to other guilds and also to frame our role or to maybe draw a little more distinct line or circle around our role. And by doing that, we allow other people to consider, is that so or not for them? And do they need us to draw a different kind of a line? So it's a communication that we're learning how to manage, I suppose, not just the fact of communicating, but of what we need to put in as kind of inputs to make sure that that flow of communication works. Over to Ben.
Yeah, I agree. And at the moment, I don't have anything to add. Over to you, Roland.
I think I feel complete. I have no other observations to offer. Over to April.
Um, I too am complete and have nothing else to offer except the feeling that we've done a somewhat thorough job in looking at lessons learned, and some of them surprised me, which is a
Mm.
good thing. On to Ben.
Yeah, well, I'm just looking at the steps, and I think um, there's sort of a combined thing, which is we're talking about how we have a better sense of the purpose of heart work,
Yeah.
and how can we capture that? How would we, at the moment, um, is there anything, and actually, we could go back to, we can do this a couple different ways, but I think really it's capturing what is this refined sense of what is heart work all about, and especially in the frame of how would we pitch this to somebody who might be interested in moving, joining with us for the fall and moving forward. So I'll pass over to Roland.
Um, well, uh, after I'd said that we have talked and we have a better sense, I was trying to remember what that sense was. Uh, so I just things that I'm noticing about how I've experienced the last season in terms of hard work. I think that uh, hard work has been the genesis of most of the offerings that are coming out of the Lifeboat Academy. There's the navigation sessions which were pre-existing, but the six conversations and now the Connect the Dots Club feel like, especially the Connect the Dots Club feels like a sort of a major component that's being introduced, and a component that is allowing for a communication about the philosophy of the Lifeboat Academy. Um, yeah, so it's sort of the providing the seed for um, the uh, the curriculum that's developing for the Lifeboat Academy. Over to April.
So I think maybe what you're referring to is the heart work kind of leadership that has evolved, that we are in fact showing some leadership. And I hadn't quite thought of it in those terms before. And if it's a light leadership, then probably we're achieving our aims, and living out the agreements, I guess. Over to Ben.
Yeah, I am aware that there is a danger of, you know, expanding the aim too much, you know. But I do think I agree. I think I think that the Connect the Dots Club is the core of Heartwork in that, and also the addition of the agreement circle as part of the fall offering. I think those two things, and I think with the Connect the Dots, well, and it's also the experience around the 6 conversations has been, you know, Ronnie uses an expression, I'm going to blank on it right now, but it's creating generative spaces for conversation. And I think that's really it. It's about, it's not telling people anything. It's not imposing anything. There's putting some structure around it to bring people together in a way that they can connect the dots. And I think that, and it's also interesting how Roland, you know, we are the Heartwork&Philosophy Guild, and we rarely talk philosophy here. But I agree that the Connect the Dots Club is where people will get an experience of the philosophy that we are working with. So it's like April's saying, it's kind of like it's a leadership by walking the talk. You know, it's leadership not by telling people things, but it's leadership by living it out, in a way that is kind of an invitation. So I really feel like the core, you know, when we talk about our purpose, about creating deeper connections and actually celebration as well, because in those conversations, generally people walk out, I think, feeling pretty joyful about how they've connected with each other. So yeah, I feel like it is that really the Heartwork Guild is about creating those opportunities for deeper connection. And I think the Connect the Dots Club is that, you know, so in some ways, I think we're just reasserting what it is, but I think this is a great like example of what it is. So back to you, Roland.
Yep. I like what you're both saying about demonstrating the agreements as examples of following the agreements. And I feel like that is even the way that we start the meetings, about going over agreements and seeing if we need clarification or adding to the agreements, even just for the meeting. Something that I'd like to see, probably it would be nice to see more of in the other meetings, sort of focusing more on how we want to work together and less on, I mean, I think that there's anyway, yes, focusing a lot on that, which may mean sort of tailoring the way that we start the meetings slightly differently to make space for that. Yeah. And yeah, and we don't talk a lot of philosophy. And I like what you're saying about that. What we're actually doing is that we are creating spaces, and we're facilitating discussion around and not just talking the philosophy, but applying it, which is, that's part of the Lifeboat Academy ethic also. It's that it's not just blathering, but it is talking to be able to act in the same way that, I feel like the corresponding expression to that is going slow to go fast. So over to April. And time check that it is 1 minute to 3.
And I need to close off my part of the conversation and bid you adieu. And I just wanted to say how enjoyable this has been in terms of, I think, capturing some stuff that I think was pretty important. So I'm very happy to have had this conversation, and I will now sign off, and we'll see. 1 minute.
Before you go, I would like to propose that for next step, so this is for the next season, that we take that as homework and come back with it together at the next Heartwork meeting. Is that agreeable? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I was going to propose, I think we can close, I think we can all close, and I was going to add to that, then also then thinking about meeting efficiency and homework and you know, how do we move it all forward, and we can just move that on the next agenda.
Cool.
Awesome. Wow. Very timely work.
Oh, I like it when it stays within the boundaries of time.
Good work, everybody.
You have to get a good loaf pan, so that your loaf comes out with a shape that is more usable. Just
Wow.
a metaphor that just came to my
This,
mind.
wow.
Meetings as baking. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.